The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the most dangerous profession that is makeup artistry. That is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
Yeah, so we're back with How to Make a Monster, the sort of meta sequel to I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and also I Was a Teenage
Werewolf.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing, by the way.
Yeah, it's like, for being as old of a movie as it is, this is like a kind of an interesting idea that it still feels kind of like hip. Like if something like this came out today, it'd be like, oh wow, that's a really, like, it seems like something Scream would do or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is a we like to think that we have the market on, like, what would we call it? Not meta humor and meta like ideas. Nope. Turns out this was happening in the 50s. So
yeah,
we're not as hip and cool as we once were.
Right.
Or if we ever were, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like right away we start out and like you can tell this is like about like you said, makeup and Hollywood. Like the opening credits are written in lipstick on like a makeup mirror.
Right. And honestly, I think that's kind of an homage to Jack Pierce because it looks like they're wearing the like the smock. Almost said schmuck. I don't know what a schmuck is, but right. But yes, it's very like just carefully done as you would do makeup or something of that nature.
Yeah, and it's like you get the title and then you get like while all the, cast and crew are showing up on the mirror, the artist is like drawing a monster over in the corner of the screen.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's cool. It kind of like orients you like this is going to be a movie about Hollywood, about makeup.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much when the credits end, we are in the makeup room and our, Jack Pierce type makeup artist. His name's Pete. I forget his last name. But
so can we talk about some of the people that are in this?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I was like, oh, hey, is Michael Landon in this too? Because, I guess, what is it, Highway to Heaven or whatever was his big thing other than like Bonanza and a couple things. And there was an episode where I think he played, or at least in a dream, he like had werewolf makeup on, right? And he was the original I Was the Teenage Werewolf. Well, turns out that a character named Tony is going to appear in How to Make a Monster, but not played by Michael Landon. Now it's played by Gary Clark.
Yeah, it's just
and then Tony, who's playing the Teenage Frankenstein, who's not Bob, but is also being played by Gary Conway.
Right.
This is confusing, is what I'm saying. No.
Yeah, I guess Michael Landon's moving on to bigger and better things, but
right at the time.
And so, yeah, like you said, we're introduced to the werewolf character. He's just gotten his makeup job. Like the artist has finished and is like showing him in the mirror, and like they do a lot where he's like, oh, I don't even recognize myself. Like I'm scared to even look at myself in the mirror.
Right. Terrifying my own self.
Yeah, which, like as we keep going back to is, plays with the whole monsters looking at themselves in the mirror and being surprised at their own appearance. And in this case, you have like a regular guy is seeing a monstrous version of himself and is surprised by it.
But it's okay because this is part of his job. This isn't something terrible that's happened to him. Not yet, anyway.
Right. So he's like, oh, this, I look even better than the Frankenstein that you just recently did.
Right. That was your best work.
Yeah. So both the actor and the artist are pretty impressed with their work.
Well, Pete even mentions, Pete, the makeup artist, is like, no, it's all creation, right? So I'm creating the makeup and everything for you, but you're creating the character. So it's all part of creation. It's all sacred. So it's definitely an interesting take that it's almost a metaphysical act for this guy, for Pete, that is.
Pete definitely, like, he takes what he does very seriously.
Very seriously.
Yeah. And so he walks his most recent creation across the studio lot to go film. And, like, you know, as they're passing, there's several other little pockets of people. They're like, oh, wow, look at his new work. Like, this is some of the best work ever. We should get a werewolf in our movie.
Well, I like, that would be a pirate who's like, I want to climb up on the deck and instead of the enemy captain see a werewolf. And then the other guy's like, yeah, but how did a werewolf get out to sea? How'd that happen? You have to show that.
Yeah. And then there's like a studio tour, like a bunch of tourists who pass by and they see him and they're all impressed. But then they finally arrive on set and the director's there and he's like, well, werewolf, meet Frankenstein.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, obviously kind of a reference to the Universal film. We have the two actors shake hands in their full makeup and everything.
Right. And I like how he's like, this is a fight. All right, I want a good, clean battle.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's kind of giving direction on what he wants them to do, but kind of leaving it up to them a little bit to choreograph what the fight's going to look like.
Right. And at this point, Pete says something a little weird, in my opinion. Like, he wants to take a picture of the boys' home and study them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not cool. Maybe don't do that. I mean, I get you're wanting to get your, your own work, but maybe just, do it, at the lot.
Yeah. Like, he definitely has like a sense of possession over them. Like, when they're in the makeup, they're no longer human. They are his creations or his children. He calls them a couple of times. So it's an interesting relationship that he has here, which I guess, it is a strange thing. If you're an artist and you make a painting, it's yours and you get to do with it whatever you want. But if you're a makeup artist, you're doing your work on another person. Yeah,
for that person.
Yeah, so it's kind of, the lines there are I mean, they're not blurry. It's a sentient person and they get to say what they want to do with their own body.
They get their own autonomy.
Yeah, but there is that weirdness where it's like, well, I had something to do with the, this creation that's currently in front of us. But yeah, obviously in this case, Pete is, he's definitely holding on to that control a little more than he should. Like, and to start with, I mean, it's not like really, really obvious, but like there's just something a little off about Pete, and that will continue.
Yeah, he also notes that he really enjoys working with teens because they're not as lippy as the adults. It's like, they don't have the autonomy or knowledge to fight back. I'm just saying,
Yeah, yep. That is definitely accurate.
Some vibes is all I'm saying.
Right.
Nothing explicit, but definite vibes.
And so then, like, a little later, we're with Pete and his sort of, like, assistant. Rivero, yeah. And they're just kind of continuing to discuss the recent creations and some of this, stuff we've been saying. They kind of, like, continue down this road. And then suddenly two guys just kind of burst into the makeup lab and they're like, you should knock. You don't just burst into places. And they're like, yeah, we do, and we own the place.
Right, this is our place now.
Yeah, so these are like the two new studio heads, and they're basically taking a tour of the studio and deciding what they're keeping, what they're getting rid of. They're just making it their own.
Right. We've got a good news, bad news situation. The good news is they know what they're getting rid of. The bad news is it's Pete. And the monsters. They're getting rid of the monsters because now it's, dancing and music and, all kinds of that stuff.
Yeah, the monster cycle is over. They keep talking about the cycle, and then now it's all about the comedies and the musicals.
Right.
And Pete is really defensive of his work. He's like, horror films are important. They serve a purpose in society.
He's right, though. It's like a psychotherapy.
Yeah, he's very into this, that, like, it allows people to get something out that they can't get in the real world, which I agree, 100%. But obviously the studio heads they're more concerned about money and trends and stuff. So they're not listening.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're like, but don't worry, we've got a handsome severance package and blah, blah, blah. And Pete's just like...
He's insulted. He's insulted by the fact that they're going to give him money.
He's been with this company for years. This is his life's work. So he's just like, forget it. I'm not interested in your money. I'm going to go out and I'm going to prove the importance of what I do. And I don't care what you all think.
Right. But then we have Pete leaving, and it's kind of like the middle of the night almost. Mm-hmm. And he starts talking to the posters of his teenage werewolf and teenage Frankenstein, and considers them better company than humans. Which
and these are for the original movie, so it has like Michael Landon's name on it and stuff. But he eventually like monologues to these posters to the point where he's like, I'm going to destroy the studio. I'm not going to let them kill off my creations. I'll do whatever it takes to stop them.
They'll rule the day. Okay, so we know Pete's basically our Frankenstein, obviously, at this point.
He's kind of got a plan, and then it's like later on, maybe the next day, he's mixing up a batch of makeup, which, of course, back then it was more like hand mixed things,
Oh, can I just talk about his special foundation?
Yeah.
So somehow he has a special foundation or special ingredient. I don't think they actually, do they call it out? I missed it if they did.
Yeah, they say that it's novocaine.
Novocaine. Okay, see, I thought they were talking about someone else. I didn't think he was like just whipping together novocaine. But apparently, if you whip together novocaine into foundation and apply it, it'll act directly like a chemical lobotomy, and you could perform hypnosis on people easy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hoodoo going on here, man.
Because he describes that like he once did this accidentally, like months back, and the actor just forgot all of his lines, and he had to be released from the control of the novocaine with hypnotism, to be able to act again. That's
weird. I question the science on that.
Yeah. This is definitely some junk science, but. So his idea now is he's going to do the same thing on purpose, but while the actors are in this sort of hypnotic state, to this trance, he's going to turn them into real monsters.
Oh, no. And then, of course, we immediately get a cut to just the security guards, a younger one and an older one. The younger one's like, nothing goes around here. And the older one's, of course, like, yeah, well, that's for the best, really. And that's I think that's all we get from them right now. The younger one's Monahan, the older one is Clayton.
Think so. That sounds right.
Yes.
And then we go back to Pete doing makeup, doing the werewolf makeup again. While he's doing it, Pete's like, he's manipulating this kid. He's like, so here's the bad news. I'm getting fired because they say monsters are dead. And so
that means you're getting fired.
Yeah, your career is going to be over. And he's like, well, I don't have to be in the wolf makeup. I could do other things. And he's like, nah, you're typecast. You're a monster now. So you're fucked. And his name is Larry. The actor, which is a nice little like Larry Talbot reference. So Pete's putting makeup on him while he's telling him all this.
Right. And I like how he's like, hey, your skin's going to feel cold. It's going to feel like it's stretching. And then he's like, here's what you do now. Now that we know that this is kind of starting to work.
And then we just cut to the studio heads. They're in like one of the little preview theaters watching rushes or dailies, and it's a musical. And then those finish, and they get a call down like, well, we've got stuff from the horror movie from earlier. Do you want to go ahead and screen that too?
And we find out that one of the suits is like, no, I don't like horror movies. I don't want to watch this. So that's why he's getting rid of it, because he just doesn't like it. The bastard.
And the other guy's like, you're just scared. And he's like, no, it's not scared. I just don't care. I'm not into this. So he leaves, and the other guy's like, well, I mean, we're making the movie, so I do need to see what's going on. So he sits back to watch, and while the movie has like action and wolf sounds and stuff, our new real werewolf sneaks up behind him and attacks him.
Oh no. And I love how it's so cheesy, like, especially for the time. He just hops up out of the seat, grabs him, and just starts shaking him around.
Yeah, it's silly, but it works.
Oh yeah. But then we get cut to Pete, and he's like, all right, I think Larry's done everything we want him to do. Let's get rid of his little gloves. Hey, Rivera, wash these so we don't have any evidence.
And he releases Larry from the hypnotism and is like, you won't remember anything you did. You're just, that was the monster. And now you're going to be back to being Larry.
Yeah. You're just Larry now. Okay. That's interesting. So now we got the cops talking to the projectionist about the murder. Mm-hmm. So they're grilling him pretty hard. They're like, all right, so, when did this happen? When did you leave? Did anyone leave with you? What else could have happened? Who would have hated this guy?
Yeah.
And of course, the projectionist I just did projectionist things, then left.
Yeah, and he's like, I didn't hear anything. The movie was loud. Was he the one that starts telling him the exec didn't have any other enemies, or the other exec comes in at that point too?
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. The other executive does that as well.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we did fire 100 people today, so maybe one of them is mad.
You would think, right?
Right.
Well, it turns out that they found the wristwatch of that executive. It stopped at exactly 8:34 p.m. And it looks like it was destroyed with animal fangs, or there was some type of animal attack that occurred as well as a choking.
Yeah, so they're a little confused what exactly played out here. Then we just cut to Larry, who's now on a date. And he's feeling real weird. It's like the hypnotism didn't fully take. So he's it's like he has some kind of memory that he's kind of trying to shake, and he can't quite figure out what's going on.
Right. He feels like he's running away still from something.
Mm-hmm. And the girl he's with's very confused about the whole situation.
Yeah, she's just kind of like, yeah, you've been working really hard on that horror movie. That's probably all it is, You just need to chill.
And then we see back at the makeup lab, Pete is working late. And a security guard comes in. This is the younger security guard.
Mm-hmm. Monahan.
And he's like, I'm kind of investigating this murder myself a little bit. I'm curious. It seems weird. You've been working late, and there's all this weird monster. They said it's like an animal. Maybe it was a monster. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? And Pete's real cagey about it. Obviously.
Right. Well, and then the security guard does the dumbest fucking thing. He's like, nah, I don't think it was you, but I've written everything down in this little black book that has all the evidence that I've acquired in this little black book, just kind of telling him, hey, you should kill me and destroy this book.
Right. And literally as the guard leaves, before the door even shuts, he is furiously putting makeup on himself to turn into a monster himself.
Oh no. Yeah. You think he hypnotized himself, or he just makeup?
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered about that. That kind of defeats this whole plan's purpose.
Right.
But he kind of just does a sort of Jekyll and Hyde looking kind of makeup. It's just kind of creepy guy.
Right. Just really a scar-faced man.
Yeah. Then we see the guard kind of walking around the studio. He's just going on his rounds. And then Pete pops out and attacks him.
Yeah, just beats him to death.
And he's got a big bone in his hand. So then I was like, Is he supposed to be a caveman? But
he does mention the caveman, though. He does. That's one of his earlier makeup things. So maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't look like what you usually think of as there were a lot of caveman pictures from around this time, and he doesn't really look like what you usually see, but the giant bone kind of made it seem like that must be what they were going for.
Yeah, to be fair, the makeup looks like a guy who got smacked in the face with a machete.
Yeah.
I mean, just saying.
Yeah. And so, of course, the guard ends up dead in this process, and then we just see Pete back in his lab, removing the makeup, and then, leaving the studio very nonchalantly.
Right. And he makes
the guard.
He makes sure to establish his time of leaving with Clayton. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm leaving now. Write that down that I'm leaving now. Okay, bye.
Yeah. And then, of course, Clayton is like, where's my partner? So he goes to do some rounds, finds the dead body, calls the police. And then, of course, the police arrive and start asking questions. And he's like, well, the only people who left late this evening were a couple maintenance guys and Pete, the guy from makeup.
Yeah, and the cops are like, well, could it have been Pete? And Clayton's like, nah, he's harmless, man. He just does makeup. That's all he does.
Yeah, he's a nice old man. He wouldn't do anything like that.
No, not at all.
So then we just cut to like the next morning, and of course Pete had left, so the cops couldn't check in with him then. So they pop back in the next morning, but they're really just like, did you see or hear anything? They don't seem to be suspecting him yet.
Yeah. And of course, after Pete basically plays it off like, nah, it's fine. I liked Monahan. He was a good guy, that Monahan. He was one of my best friends. And they did seem kind of friendly until Monahan revealed he was doing the investigation.
Yeah.
And I love how the cop's like, hey, like, could you dress up my kid for like a party? He really wants to be a scary monster.
Yeah, and Pete's like, sure, bring him by any time. I'll take care of him.
Which that would have been an interesting scene to have happen.
Yeah. And then we just see a little later another film being shot on the studio. This is what the studio's now going for. It's a musical number. We got
This is an Elvis impersonator. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a bunch of dancing girls around him and everything, and he sings. And the song's real goofy. I don't even remember what it.
It's really not worth it.
Yeah, it's just a really dumb nonsense song. With just a bunch of dancing girls. And then while that's going on, Pete kind of walks over and is talking to one of the executives and is like, so this is what you're getting rid of me for is
right.
Not,
this wheels of progress.
Stuff. Yeah. And the exec's like, this is what sells. This is what, gets people in the theater. So yeah, we're going to keep making them.
Yep. This is the future, which nope. Turns out it really wasn't even then.
No. And then like a little later in the lab, Pete's working and two girls from a local high school paper come in.
While he's dressing up Tony.
Mm-hmm. Which like, it seems wild that like a movie studio would just let high school kids just like stroll in and ask stars questions and stuff.
Almost certainly not nowadays, but yeah, maybe then it was. Maybe that was the thing. I have a hard time believing that even then, but possibly. Yeah.
But so they're talking to Tony, the guy in the Frankenstein makeup, and they're asking like what it feels like to know he's probably going to be the last Frankenstein.
Right, the last of the Frankensteins. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, that sounds like a great movie title, right? Last of the Frankensteins?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not winking.
Which is funny, because there hadn't been any Frankenstein movies for a while when this movie or these movies came out, but this kind of was the beginning of a new cycle of monsters. So, It's kind of winking that they're like, oh yeah, this is the last. And it's actually the Hammer movies are just starting to explode at this point.
Right. And then, we're not even counting everything that happened in the 60s with Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, Tony's like, he kind of takes a little bit of offense to their line of questioning, but they're kids. So he's like, he's nice to him and everything. And it's like, oh, I've got plenty of other things I can do. And you never know with the movies, like there's always another movie.
Yeah.
And so then when they leave, Pete starts doing the Frankenstein makeup on Tony and does the hypnotism thing again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just see like later on the other executive arrives home and the Frankenstein monster just jumps out and attacks and kills him at his house.
Right, yeah, so he's waiting on him clearly, but somehow he hides from this guy.
Yeah, it's like it would make much more sense for this to have happened on the studio lot too. I don't know why they added this house to the mix.
Yeah, we have the scene where it's like the executive's in his really nice car, just driving for like a good solid minute, and then all of a sudden he gets out and gets ambushed at his house. Which, like, I get it that to a degree that establishes something other than, hey, there's been 3 murders directly on the lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I don't see how that would really change the ending, but sure, why not? Right. So
I guess the one thing that comes out of it is once the Frankenstein monster kills him, the monster runs away.
And he gets chased by dogs.
Yeah, and then he bumps into a woman who's like out on a walk or something, and she screams.
So that's why they did it. They just wanted to get him spotted by a civilian.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, that's the only thing that really like has any kind of impact on the rest of the story.
As much as it does.
Yeah. And so then we've just got him back at the he's at Pete's home now. Or no, not Pete's home. He's at Rivera's home. Right. Yeah. And Pete is there, and they remove the makeup and they unhypnotize him.
Right. By the way, here's to Pete for like literally like establishing other people as his alibis. Because like literally, if they went hunting for Rivera or hunting for the monster, they probably would have just ended up at Rivera's. Mm-hmm. And be like, oh, this is the guy. He's the assistant makeup guy. He did all the murders, and all Pete had to do was go, yeah, he's the guy. He stole my stuff and did the thing. Mm-hmm. Boom, done.
Yeah. And then so it's like the next morning, and Rivero is reading the newspaper, which has all the news of these murders.
For the third time, mind you.
Yeah, and he's getting really nervous that, like, it's going to come back on them.
Mm-hmm. Pete's like, hey, shut it. It's fine. We're good. Just follow my lead. Don't say anything. We got to go to see the cops right now. It'll be fine. Yeah, just leave the thinking and the talking to me. Very doctor-ish of him. And I'm not talking about who. Like, that's kind of the thing that the other Dr. Frankenstein would have done from I Was Teenage Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so then on the way out, Pete gets kind of like cornered by Larry's agent, who is really pissed. Mm-hmm. He's like, what are you doing telling my client that he's, all washed up and typecast? That's not for you to decide. He's my client. I'll get him work. You shut up.
Right. And I could even get you work elsewhere.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, Larry's got plenty of, room to get work at, not as a monster. And, Pete's just kind of like, okay, fine, whatever. And then we just see them at the police station. They're all kind of like sitting around. It's Pete and Rivero and Clayton all sitting around in like the lobby of the station waiting to be interviewed.
Right. Well, at this time, the cops are already grilling the lady that the monster ran into.
Yeah, and she describes the monster in pretty good detail. Like she knows that this was something that looked inhuman.
Very inhuman.
So then they talk to Clayton, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't hear anything, but I was back at the guard station, and I was, I had the radio up pretty loud, so I wouldn't have heard anything."
Right. So they're like, "Wait a second, you had the radio blaring really loud," and I love Clayton's like, "Oh yeah, I just like really loud music." Yeah. But then they're like, oh, well, maybe you killed Monahan. And also, if you didn't, maybe, that's obviously like a little bit of dereliction of duty if you're just listening to music and letting this other guy just walk around, right? Mm-hmm. So they're trying to hustle Clayton and get him nervous. But Clayton's defense is everyone was friendly. Everyone was family. We were all like family.
Yeah. So he's not really shaken up. And so then they bring in Pete and Rivero together. And like Pete is, stone cold. Like he answers the questions like bare minimum. He's doing a great job.
He's listening to the lawyers on TikTok. Shut the fuck up.
Exactly. But then they start talking to Rivero, and he is like not handling this at all.
Well, and then they start just like bullying him. They just start like hitting him with a barrage of questions, and Rivero's about to lose his shit. And Pete keeps interjecting. He's like, shut up. Don't tell him. Don't say it. You don't have to tell him nothing.
Yeah. And I think that, it's like Rivero is nervous, and there may have been a way they could have played it off as like, oh, I'm just not good in these situations. I'm just nervous. But Pete constantly interjecting for him makes them both look guilty.
Right. But of course, even though that was a weird line of questions, the cops were like, they didn't do it. Let them go.
Yeah. So they send them out, and then they're like,
it's weird. Pete's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys were definitely fishy. I don't know where we should point our investigation at this point, but something's not right with those two. Mm-hmm. And then we've got Pete and Rivero walking back to the cars, and like Pete is chewing Rivero out for like, messing everything up in the interrogation.
Yeah, it's pretty much like you wouldn't like turn state's witness on me, would you, Rivero? You wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah, you can tell it sounds like Pete's kind of like, I think I'm going to end up having to kill you before this is all said and done.
I got a feeling. Ooh. But of course, Rivero's trying to deflect, and he's like, well, something could happen with the boys. Maybe we need to talk to the boys about it, or the two teenagers.
Mm-hmm. And then back in the police station, a crime lab guy comes in and he's like, I found a bunch of makeup under the executive's fingernails. It's like whoever he was scratching at, defending himself, they were wearing a bunch of like caked on makeup.
Right. And then there's something special about this makeup, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right. And you would think the cops would be like, shit, we got to go get the makeup guys.
Mm-hmm.
But no.
Yeah. Exactly. They're like, we're going to have to test what's in that blend and then try to compare it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so then back at Pete's lab, he arrives back and like all of his stuff has already been packed up for him. Like he is, they're pushing him out.
Right. They're already ready to let him go. Yeah.
And he kind of has a moment like standing in this like empty room with like boxes, and he just kind of gets sentimental. Like, he's dedicated his life to this career, and now he's just been tossed out kind of unceremoniously. He's disappointed at the way things have ended.
Right. Well, he can't be too disappointed because he does have his friends, one being Rivero and the other ones being Larry and Tony. And, Larry and Tony are more than happy to help him pack up and get the last of his stuff out of there.
Yeah, he's like, we should celebrate. You should come by. We'll have a couple drinks and, kind of have a send off.
Teenage boys having a couple drinks. Okay. Anyway, right. Still sketchy.
Mm-hmm. And so then, they're gone, and the cops arrive to try to investigate. And of course, they find that the whole makeup room is completely cleaned out,
except for the trash can.
Yeah, in the trash can, they find a few little bits of makeup and everything. So they've got the crime lab guy, and he just sets up a little mini lab on a counter right there, and puts some stuff under a microscope, and he's like, "Yep, this is the same makeup."
Right. No chemicals to test, just it is the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I trust his science. I'm just saying.
And then meanwhile back at Pete's home, he's showing Tony and Larry his collection of masks. He's like made masks of all of the different creatures he's made over the years.
Right, but also he starts doing some really creepy shit, Anthony, with the light, and he gets like a what is it? Not like a lamplighter. Well, yeah, like a lamplighter stick, and uses that to light a bunch of like really tall candles.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we get color. This was black and white. Now it's color.
Yeah, and he keeps telling them like, gaze upon my children. This is my family. I've dedicated my life to these. The teens are both kind of like, this is weird. Like they look weird out while he's there, but then he's like, Rivero and I'll be right back. We'll get you some drinks.
Well, no, he also mentions that, sometimes I come here whenever I need help from a stronger source than myself. And I'm like, is he a sadist? is the devil himself going to appear in this movie? I mean,
yeah, but that would have seemed fitting for this movie for sure. But yeah, so Pete and Rivero leave the room, and as soon as they're out of there, the teens are both like, we got to get the hell out of here. Yeah. This guy is weird. We do not need to be here. We need to tell him we've got dates and we need to go pick up our girls, and we need to get out.
Right. Makes sense. I would have done the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we cut to Rivero and Pete having a discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like back in the kitchen.
And Pete's basically grilling Rivero now. Like, well, Rivero says, I think I'm going to leave and go to Arizona with my brother and just like hang out there, wait for the cops there.
Yeah, get out, get out away from the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete's like, I don't know that I can trust you. I feel like you might be the weak link here in this whole situation.
Well, he plays it off. He's like, you're really devoted, right? And Rivero's like, yeah. And he's like, you would never betray me, right? No. Rivero's like, I'd never do that. As a matter of fact, I think those boys, they would betray you well before me. Okay. Yeah. I'll remember that. I'll remember that, Rivero, right after I shank you.
Yeah, so he puts Rivero down, and then we go back to the teens who are like realizing that they both have weird memory gaps. They're like, so you blacked out the last time you got put in the makeup too? That's weird. Same thing happened to me. And then Pete strolls in with his drinks and is like, all right, let's have a toast, boys.
Okay, here's the thing that bothers me. They actually drink the fucking drink that he gives them. Right?
These are not sealed bottles or cans. These are poured drinks, and they've been talking about how creepy he is.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a feeling, go with that feeling. Don't drink anything someone just hands you, unless you really know that person.
Absolutely, yeah.
And even then, better safe than sorry.
Right. And they're like, thanks for the drink, but we can't stay for dinner. We got to go. And Pete's like, no, you can't leave. I brought you here for a purpose.
A great honor.
Add you to my wall.
No. Okay, well, at least it's not Satan. I mean,
yeah, and they're both right away like, what do you mean add us to your wall? And he's like, I just need to take measurements of your faces.
So I'll make masks. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Not your real heads.
Yeah.
They need to be life-size measurements. Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're not staying. We know you did something weird to us. We tried to.
Well, they even say we've tried to escape and we're locked inside.
Yeah. Pete's finally like, but I can't let you leave because you might go to the cops, and you can't go to the cops. And they're like, why would we go to the cops? We don't know anything. Nothing happened. And, he's like, yeah, you killed some people. This is all you're responsible for these murders.
Well, he's like, we killed people. each and every one of us did one murder.
Right. And they're not, obviously they don't have that memory. So they're kind of like in denial and kind of struggling. And in the process, all those tall candlesticks you were talking about get bumped over.
Oh, no, it's like it was a plot contrivance. No.
Right. And so we didn't really say, but like this room is just like heavy, like velvet curtains all along the wall with all the masks like hanging on them.
Well, like literally, if you have the idea of a Satanist lair with masks, that is this place.
Yeah. And also, if you have an idea for a fire trap,
that too,
that's also this room, because those curtains just instantly just go up in flames.
Yeah. Well, everything and the masks start melting, and that's really cool.
Yeah, because I guess they're like wax masks or something.
Right. So, but I could swear there were like some skulls underneath. So maybe this wasn't Pete's first time.
Yeah, they're definitely like, they play this up for creepiness for sure. And like Pete is panicking and like screaming that his children are dying.
Oh.
And, he basically runs into the flames to save the masks and ends up burning up in the process.
Right. And then, oh no, but that still means that Larry and Tony are locked inside this burning building. They're going to die, Anthony.
Yeah, so they're like pounding on the door and can't get out, but then the cops arrive and break down the door and pull them out.
Oh, man. And this is the best. They're like, are you okay? You all right? And the boys are like, yeah, we're fine, but Pete isn't.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, because I think the cops are like, where's Rivero and Pete? And they're like, we haven't seen Rivero. We don't know, but it's way too late for Pete. He's definitely dead.
Right.
He's in there. And then we just see a close-up of fire and then the end.
The end. Abrupt ending, yes!
This may be one of the most abrupt endings we've seen even. Like,
I mean, there is like barely resolution to this thing.
Yeah, like we don't even get the cops being like, "Oh, that's a shit." It's just like, "Nope, he's dead," and then that's it. Like we don't.
Right.
Yeah, the cops don't respond at all. It's pretty great.
I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's like the cops. Of course, this is still the 50s, in which I think the cops were finally trying to change their image, public image, but they haven't gotten there yet, so they're still incompetent, and they just basically show up at the very end, let the guys out.
Yeah. So yeah, it ends abruptly, but I gotta say, like I hadn't seen this before, and it's a really cool way to kind of like turn those two previous movies into kind of this like meta trilogy.
Right. Yeah. It is cool. I mean, we're joking about it a little bit, but it's a nice cap, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's silly, but it's like, the other two movies were pretty lighthearted as well, and this feels like of a piece for with those, but in the same way that Teenage Frankenstein had some other stuff going on. I feel like this has some stuff to say about, like, this is made by an independent studio. And it definitely feels like it's casting aspersions on, like, the major studios and that system and how it pushes out creativity for, that, which is, still accurate today. This is, the algorithm and all that. Like, this movie definitely is, like, trying to say these movies matter. Right. There are people that these do something for, and we should, give them that.
Right. And luckily we have studios like Blumhouse and A24 that are, fighting the good fight, as it were, against the big mega, studios and such.
Yeah. That definitely feels like the small studios like that today are still kind of carrying the torch that, the studios back then were doing. Right. The smaller studios. So yeah, it feels pretty much just as relevant today as it did then. And, like, I like the title, too, because it's kind of a play where it's like, Pete knows how to make a monster in terms of makeup. But then there's also, like, this studio broke Pete. They made him into a monster by, not respecting his work, his life's work. So, it's that's like the original Frankenstein monster. That's how to turn him into a monster, is by like, not respecting him and not treating him like he has value to give to the world.
Right. Exactly. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got anything else to say about that?
No, I don't think so. This is another short one. It's like an hour and 12. Like we said last time, it makes a good double feature with the previous one. You can.
Well, I mean, maybe a triple feature if you got the time.
Yeah, I mean, you could honestly watch all three of these and it'd be, the length of like a
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So if you've watched The Fellowship of the Ring, you could watch this entire trilogy probably.
Absolutely.
So there you go. All right, Anthony. So in that case, where can they find us?
So you can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, and you can also find us over at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where we're doing all kinds of different stuff. And we've got, free trials now where you can check things out and see what you like, see if you want to stick around.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun, wacky stuff we've done there. Hey, Anthony, before we go, we're doing this back to school special. What do you think about, like, maybe graduating a little bit? Maybe, going to a institute of higher learning, like college, or like campus. Like, if Dr. Frankenstein was on campus. That was a reach. Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's Dr. Frankenstein on campus. That's what we'll be talking about next week. So join us for that one. This is one that I have never seen. I don't know much about it at all, but it fit our theme. So I'm curious to see what it looks like.
Absolutely. What is this in the 70s? And does it now? I'm looking at something. It says Flick. Was it also known as Flick?
Yes. For some reason, that was its alternate title, which makes I'm even more confused about what that could possibly mean.
Yeah, there's a number of things it could mean, but we're going to find out next week.
Yeah.
All right. In that case, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.